What if the parts of yourself you've lost weren't taken from you? You traded them away, one small compromise at a time. Imagine walking into a museum built entirely from your own life. Every room holds something that used to belong to you. And as you walk further in, you start noticing something wrong. Room after room, the exhibits are missing, not stolen, not vandalized, just gone, one at a time. So slowly that no single loss was ever big enough to notice on its own. Something has been quietly disappearing from this museum for years, and you're the one who's been walking through it the whole time, past every empty pedestal without ever quite stopping to ask when it emptied. If you want to help solve this, consider subscribing. Now, let's start looking room by room. Start with the room labeled preferences. What's your favorite restaurant right now? Not the one you suggest, because it's easy, or because you already know they'll like it, or because suggesting anything else feels like it would take more energy than it's worth. Yours. That took longer than it should have. That's your first missing exhibit. Somewhere along the way, what do you want quietly turned into? I don't mind offered so often in so many small decisions that it stopped feeling like a compromise and started feeling like your actual personality. People started describing you as easygoing. You started believing them. Walking to the next room, dreams. Not 5-year plan dreams, not career dreams with deadlines attached. The smaller ones, the thing you used to imagine doing someday, before someday quietly stopped coming up in conversation at all. When was the last time you let yourself want something without immediately calculating whether it was realistic, or convenient, or worth the disruption to everyone else's expectations of you? Notice how quickly the wanting gets interrupted now, almost before it fully forms, like a reflex installed somewhere you can't quite locate. Keep walking. The next room is opinions. Think about the last group conversation where you had a genuine reaction to something and chose not to share it. Not because it wasn't true, but because agreeing was simpler, faster, and less likely to change how the room felt about you afterward. Multiply that by every conversation, like going back years, and you start to see how an entire room can empty out one silent nod at a time. Notice the room after that. Humor, the specific version of funny that was actually yours, not the version you performed depending on who's watching, adjusted for the audience, softened for whoever might be offended by the real thing. Some people can point to their own sense of humor immediately, without hesitation. Other people have to think for a long moment before they remember what it even used to sound like, before it got smoothed into something more universally agreeable to everyone in the room at once. Further in, curiosity. The questions you used to ask purely because you wanted to know the answer, with no audience and no purpose beyond your own interest in the world. Curiosity is expensive in a way most people never notice. It takes attention that could otherwise go toward monitoring the room, reading the mood, staying one step ahead of whatever might need managing next. And at some point, for a lot of people, that attention budget got quietly reassigned, one distracted question at a time. And the last room, the one most people walk past without registering how empty it's become, boundaries. The exhibit here isn't a preference or an opinion. It's simpler than that, and somehow harder to notice missing. It's the plain ability to say that doesn't work for me, without immediately following it with 3 sentences of justification, in case the first sentence alone wasn't enough to earn permission to say no at all. If any of those 6 rooms felt emptier than they should, that's not because someone broke in and stole something from you while you weren't looking. It's because you traded each one away, quietly, one at a time, in exchange for something that felt in the moment, more urgent than any single exhibit, staying connected to the people around you. Here's the mechanism underneath all 6 of those rooms. Psychologists sometimes describe pieces of it through the lens of self-concept or role confusion. But here, we're going to call it identity substitution, not a diagnosis. A description of what happens when someone repeatedly trades pieces of themselves for the sake of preserving a relationship, until the collection that used to be recognizably them has been replaced, exhibit by exhibit, with things other people needed it to be instead. Think about the last time someone asked what you wanted. Did an actual preference come to mind right away, or did you check the room first and answer with whatever wouldn't cause friction? Now, here's where most people get this wrong about their own story, and where I want you to slow down, because this is the part that actually explains everything that's happened in every room we just walked through. The instinct is to assume the problem was simply giving pieces of yourself away, as if the mistake was generosity or weakness, or not valuing yourself enough to hold on to what was yours. But look closer, because that's not actually what happened. Every single one of those trades worked. Every time you gave up a preference and the relationship stayed intact. Every time you swallowed an opinion and the room stayed comfortable. Every time you softened your humor and nobody pulled away, your brain received a clear, unambiguous result. This worked. Do it again. That's not a character flaw. That's a learning system doing exactly what learning systems are built to do, reinforcing whatever behavior successfully preserved the thing it was protecting. The problem was never any individual trade considered on its own. The problem is that the trades kept succeeding over and over, which taught your brain quietly and repeatedly that this was simply the reliable way to stay connected to people, more reliable, in fact, than holding your ground ever seemed to be. The psychologist Carl Rogers spent decades studying what happens when someone's actual lived experience drifts away from their self-concept, the story they carry about who they are. Rogers described this as the gap between who you really are and who you've learned to be. And he noted that the wider that gap grows, the harder it becomes to even recognize what you genuinely feel underneath all those adjustments, one adjustment at a time. Erik Erikson, working on identity development more broadly, described a tension he called identity versus role confusion, the ongoing difficulty of maintaining a stable sense of self while simultaneously performing whatever role a given relationship or environment seems to require of you. Erikson's point wasn't that playing roles is inherently unhealthy. Everyone plays roles. It's that when the roles are never checked against an actual stable self underneath them, the roles eventually become the only thing left standing once the checking stops happening at all. Neither Rogers nor Erikson were describing something rare or something reserved for people who lack self-awareness. If anything, this pattern often shows up most in attentive self-aware people, precisely because each individual trade felt so reasonable, so proportionate, so clearly worth it at the time it was made. Now here's the part worth sitting inside rather than rushing past toward comfort too quickly. If you feel something like grief walking back through those 6 rooms, the missing preferences, the dreams you stopped voicing out loud, the humor that got smoothed over until it matched everyone else's, that grief isn't proof that something is wrong with you. It's proof that a self existed clearly enough once for its absence to actually be noticeable now, years later, standing in front of an empty pedestal. You can't grieve an exhibit that was never there in the first place. The fact that the emptiness registers at all, the fact that it aches a little to notice, means there's something real underneath it, still intact enough to be worth eventually restoring. And that's where the hope in this actually comes from. Not from being told it'll be fine, not from encouragement layered over the top of the grief, but from understanding exactly what happened room by room. If this identity was slowly replaced through a long series of successful trades, then it can be rebuilt through the same mechanism working in the opposite direction. Not through one dramatic decision, not through a single leap, but through small, repeatable moments where a real preference gets voiced instead of traded away and the connection survives anyway. Each time that happens, your brain receives a different result than it's used to. This also worked in a learning system that reinforced disappearance for years can just as reliably reinforce return. So here's the motto, stated as plainly as I can put it. Every time we repeatedly abandon our own needs to preserve connection, we quietly teach our brain which identity deserves to survive, not through one loss, dramatic and traceable to a single moment, through thousands of small, successful trades, each one reasonable on its own terms, each one adding up slowly to something that eventually stopped looking like you. You didn't lose the exhibits all at once. You traded them one at a time. For a sense of belonging, you didn't lose yourself. You slowly stopped choosing yourself. Go back to the museum one more time. It's still standing. Most of the rooms are still there, structurally intact, simply waiting for something to be placed back inside them. A museum that's still standing, even mostly empty, can always be restocked one exhibit at a time. That's a fundamentally different situation than a museum that was demolished. And it's worth remembering the difference the next time an empty room feels permanent. That reframes the question worth asking now. Not who am I anymore? A question that quietly assumes there's nothing left to find in any of these rooms. Instead, Which room am I willing to walk back into first? And what's one honest preference I could place back inside it today? Small enough to risk, real enough to matter. And that question opens into something bigger, which is really where this investigation has been leading the whole time. If you've spent years trading away your preferences to preserve connection, how would you even recognize a genuine want if it showed up now? After years of practice, checking the room first and answering last every single time. That's not a small question. That's the next room in this investigation, and it's exactly where we're headed next. If any of this landed somewhere real, ask yourself this: what's one preference you gave up so quietly you didn't even notice you'd stopped having it?